He walked into the lobby like he owned the world, his hand on the waist of a woman who wasn't his wife. Daniel Archer thought he was the smartest man in the room, a wealthy executive pulling off the perfect affair in a five-star fortress of luxury. He ordered the most expensive champagne, booked the presidential suite, and prepared for a weekend of secret indulgence. But he made one fatal calculation error. He didn't check who signed the paychecks of the staff he was barking orders at. He didn't know that the signature at the bottom of the deed to the entire hotel chain didn't belong to a corporation. It belonged to the woman waiting for him at home. This is the story of how a cheating husband checked into a five-star hotel only to find out his wife was the one holding the master key. Daniel Archer adjusted his silk tie in the hallway mirror, catching the glint of ambition in his own eyes. He was 42, fit, and possessed the kind of jawline that suggested money. To the outside world, and specifically to his wife, Vivian, he was the senior VP of logistics at Archer & Co., a mid-sized shipping firm that did well enough to afford them a comfortable house in the suburbs of Chicago. But Daniel had an appetite that comfortable couldn't satisfy. "Are you sure you have to go this weekend?" Vivian asked. Her voice drifted from the kitchen, mixed with the sound of a coffee grinder. Daniel suppressed a sigh of irritation. He walked into the kitchen, pasting a regretful smile onto his face. Vivian was standing by the island, wearing oversized sweatpants and a messy bun. She looked tired. She always looked tired these days. She managed some vague online consulting business, something to do with corporate restructuring, but Daniel never really asked for details. As far as he was concerned, her little home office hobby paid for the groceries, while he paid for the life. "Babe, you know how the merger is," Daniel said, walking over to kiss her forehead. It was a practiced, hollow gesture. "The partners in New York are demanding FaceTime. If I land this contract, we're talking about a bonus that could pay off the Lexus." Vivian looked up at him. Her eyes, usually a sharp, piercing blue, seemed clouded today. "It's our anniversary next week, Daniel. I thought we could start celebrating early." I know," he soothed, checking his Rolex. It was a Submariner, a gift from Vivian, 3 years ago. "I'll make it up to you. When I get back on Monday, I'll book us a table at Le Bernardin, just you and me." "Okay," she whispered, looking back down at her coffee. "Safe travels. Call me when you land?" "Of course." He didn't look back as he walked out the door. The moment he slid into the driver's seat of his black Lexus, the regretful husband persona evaporated. He pulled out his burner phone, an iPhone 14 he kept hidden in the spare tire well of the trunk, and swiped it open. To Jessica, the prize, ETA 20 minutes. "You ready?" From Jessica, the prize. "Been ready for an hour. I bought that red dress you like. Don't make me wait, Daddy." Daniel grinned. Jessica was 26, an account manager at a rival firm, and she was everything Vivian wasn't. Loud, demanding, and dangerously exciting. He wasn't going to New York. He wasn't going to a merger meeting. He was driving 40 minutes downtown to the newly renovated, ultra-exclusive, the Chatsworth Intercontinental. It was the crown jewel of Chicago's hospitality scene. Rooms started at $1,200 a night. The presidential suite, which he had booked, was $8,500. It was a reckless amount of money, but Daniel felt he deserved it. He had been skimming off the top of his company's shipping manifests for 6 months, funneling cash into an offshore account. He felt invincible. He was the king of his own secret kingdom. He picked Jessica up 2 blocks from her apartment to avoid prying neighbors. She hopped into the car, a cloud of expensive vanilla perfume filling the cabin. "New York looks different than I remember," she teased, sliding her hand onto his thigh. "New York is boring," Daniel laughed, merging onto the highway. "The Chatsworth is better. I heard they have a Michelin star chef doing room service this month. Whatever you want, you get." "I want the spa treatment," she said, scrolling through her phone. "And I want to post pictures." "Can I post pictures? I'll crop you out." "Careful, Jess," he warned, though his tone was light. "Ghost mode this weekend. Just us." As the Chicago skyline rose before them, glittering in the late afternoon sun, Daniel felt a surge of adrenaline. He had pulled this off a dozen times before, but never at a place this high profile. The Chatsworth was known for its discretion, its celebrity clientele, and its absolute luxury. He had no idea that the hotel had changed ownership 3 weeks ago. He had no idea that the acquisition had been aggressive, quiet, and led by a holding company called VS Global. And he certainly had no idea that VS stood for Vivian Sterling, his wife's maiden name. The valet at the Chatsworth was dressed better than most of Daniel's employees. The man bowed slightly as he opened the car door. "Welcome to the Chatsworth, sir. Checking in?" "Yes." "Reservation under Archer," Daniel said, tossing the keys to the valet with a practiced nonchalance. He grabbed his overnight bag and Jessica's Louis Vuitton tote. He didn't notice the valet pause for a microsecond at the mention of the name. "Mr. Archer," the valet repeated, his eyes flickering toward the license plate and then back to Daniel. "Very good, sir. Please proceed to the VIP desk on the left. They are expecting you." Daniel didn't catch the hesitation. He guided Jessica through the revolving brass doors and into the lobby. The lobby was a cathedral of opulence. Marble floors that looked like frozen smoke, chandeliers dripping with Swarovski crystals, and a scent in the air that smelled like old money and fresh lilies. Jessica audibly gasped. "Daniel, this is insane," she whispered, clutching his arm. "Only the best," he murmured, puffing his chest out. They bypassed the standard check-in line and approached the VIP concierge, a heavy mahogany desk situated in a private alcove. The woman behind the desk was striking, with silver hair pulled back into a severe bun and glasses perched on her nose. Her name tag read Mrs. Calloway, Guest Relations Director. "Good afternoon," Daniel said, placing his platinum Amex on the marble counter. "Checking in. Daniel Archer, Presidential Suite." Mrs. Calloway didn't smile. She didn't type immediately. She looked at Daniel, then at Jessica, her gaze lingering on Jessica's hand, resting intimately on Daniel's lower back. "Mr. Archer," Mrs. Calloway said. Her voice was cool, like polished glass. "We have been anticipating your arrival." "I bet you have," Daniel smirked. "I put in a request for the romance package. Champagne on ice, rose petals, the works. I trust that's been handled?" Mrs. Calloway typed something slowly into her computer. "The amenities have been adjusted to suit the occasion, sir." "Adjusted?" Daniel frowned. "What does that mean?" "It means we have ensured your stay is memorable," she said, finally looking up. Her eyes were unreadable. "You are in the Sterling penthouse, our finest accommodation. It occupies the entire top floor." "Perfect," Daniel said, turning to wink at Jessica. "However," Mrs. Calloway continued, "there is a small protocol update. Due to the high security of the penthouse, the owner requires a secondary verification of identity for all guests." "May I have your companion's ID as well?" Daniel stiffened. "I've stayed in 5-star hotels all over the world. I've never had to ID my guest. She's with me." "New policy, sir," Mrs. Calloway said, her hand extended. She wasn't asking, she was commanding. "Strict liability measures." Jessica shrugged and dug her license out of her purse. "It's fine, baby. Just give it to her." Mrs. Calloway took Jessica's ID. She scanned it. Then she did something strange. She picked up a heavy fountain pen and wrote Jessica's full name, Jessica Marie Thorne, onto a notepad, underlined it twice, and circled it. "Thank you, Miss Thorne," Mrs. Calloway said, sliding the ID back. She handed Daniel 2 key cards. They were black, made of heavy metal, with a gold crest embossed on them. "The private elevator is to your right. It will take you directly to the 40th floor. Enjoy your stay." "That was weird," Jessica muttered as they walked away. "Why did she look at me like I stole something?" "She's just envious," Daniel scoffed, guiding her toward the gold-plated elevator doors. "She's working a desk, and you're wearing a dress that costs 3 months of her salary. Ignore the help, Jess." The elevator ride was smooth and silent. When the doors opened on the 40th floor, they stepped directly into a living room larger than Daniel's entire house. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of Lake Michigan. A grand piano sat in the corner. "Oh my God," Jessica squealed, dropping her bag and running to the window. Daniel smiled, feeling the tension of the business trip lie melting away. He walked over to the minibar, expecting to find the bottle of Dom Perignon he had ordered. There was a silver ice bucket on the table. But when he looked inside, it wasn't Dom Perignon. It was a bottle of cheap, sparkling cider, the kind you buy at a gas station for $4.99. Daniel frowned. He picked up the bottle. A tag was tied to the neck. "Compliments of the house," it read in elegant calligraphy. "What the hell?" Daniel muttered. What's wrong? Jessica asked, coming up behind him. They messed up the order, Daniel snapped. I ordered a $400 bottle of champagne. They sent apple juice. Maybe it's a joke? Or like, an artisan thing? Jessica giggled. Open it anyway. No, I'm not drinking cider, Daniel said, his anger rising. This was about principle. He walked over to the room phone and punched the button for the concierge. It rang once, twice. Then a voice answered. Not the polite, generic voice of a front desk agent. It was a deep, gravelly male voice. Mr. Archer. Is everything to your satisfaction? No, it is not, Daniel barked. I ordered Dom Perignon. There is a bottle of cheap cider in my room. I want this fixed immediately, and I expect it to be comped. There was a long silence on the other end. I apologize, Mr. Archer, the voice said. The cider was a specific request from the ownership office. They believed it suited your current budget profile. Daniel froze. Excuse me? My budget profile? I'm paying $8,000 a night for this room. Do you know who I am? We know exactly who you are, Daniel, the voice said. The Mr. Archer was gone. Daniel pulled the phone away from his ear, staring at it. Who is this? This is Arthur Henderson, the general manager. I'll send a bottle of Dom up immediately, sir. My apologies. It must have been a mix-up in the system. The line clicked dead. Daniel stood there, a cold prickle of unease running down his spine. The voice had sounded patronizing, mocking, almost. And for a second, he thought the man had sounded familiar. Is it coming? Jessica asked, flopping onto the massive velvet sofa. Yeah, they're sending it up, Daniel said, shaking it off. He was being paranoid. He was just tired from the stress of the lies. He walked into the bathroom to wash his face. The bathroom was all white marble and gold fixtures. He turned on the tap, splashing cold water on his skin. When he reached for a towel, he stopped. The towels were monogrammed. Usually, they would have the hotel's logo, a stylized C for Chatsworth. These towels had a different logo stitched in gold thread. It was an intertwined V and S. Vose. Daniel stared at it. It seemed familiar, but he couldn't place it. Maybe it was the designer? Versace? No, the logo was different. He dried his face and walked back out. A knock came at the door. Room service, a voice called out. Daniel opened the door. A young waiter pushed a cart in. On it was the bottle of Dom Perignon. Here you are, sir, the waiter said, uncorking it with expert precision. He poured 2 glasses. About time, Daniel grunted. He took a sip. It was perfect. Crisp, cold, expensive. The unease from the phone call faded. Anything else, sir? The waiter asked. No, that's all. Here. Daniel reached into his pocket to pull out a $20 bill for a tip. The waiter raised a hand, stopping him. That won't be necessary, Mr. Archer. The owner has instructed us that your money is no good here. Daniel laughed, interpreting it as a VIP perk. Well, that's more like it. Pass my thanks to the owner. I certainly will, the waiter said. He smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. It was the kind of smile a shark gives before it bites. She is very eager to ensure you get exactly what you deserve. The waiter bowed and left, the heavy door clicking shut behind him. She? Daniel paused, glass halfway to his lips. He hadn't caught that before. The owner was a woman? Babe, come look at this, Jessica called from the bedroom. Daniel walked in. Jessica was standing by the bedside table. She was holding a framed photograph that was sitting on the nightstand. Who are these people? She asked. Hotel rooms usually had generic art, abstract paintings, photos of local landmarks. They didn't have personal family photos on the nightstand. Daniel walked over and looked at the photo. The glass slipped from his hand and shattered on the floor, champagne soaking into the expensive carpet. The photo was black and white. It showed a group of people at a ribbon-cutting ceremony for a building. In the center, holding the oversized scissors, was an older man, Richard Sterling, a real estate tycoon who had died 3 years ago. Standing next to him, looking young and fiercely intelligent, was a woman. It was Vivian, his wife, and standing next to her, looking bored and looking at his watch, was Daniel. It was a photo from 10 years ago, a charity event he had been dragged to by Vivian's father. He had forgotten all about it. Daniel? Jessica asked, stepping back. Is that your wife? Daniel's heart hammered against his ribs like a trapped bird. Why is there a picture of my wife in this hotel room? He grabbed the phone again, his hands shaking. He dialed 0. Front desk. This is Daniel Archer in the penthouse. There is a personal photograph in my room. A mistake. I want someone up here now. Mr. Henderson is on his way up, sir, the operator said calmly. He anticipated you might have questions about the decor. Daniel slammed the phone down. Pack your bags, Jess. What? We just got here. We're leaving. Now. Something is wrong. This is some kind of sick joke. Daniel, you're scaring me. I said pack, he roared. He grabbed his suitcase, throwing it onto the bed. He zipped it up. He turned to the door, ready to storm out. But the door didn't open. He pulled the handle. Locked. He tried the deadbolt. It turned, but the door wouldn't budge. It was electronically sealed from the outside. The room phone rang. A shrill, piercing sound in the silent suite. Daniel stared at it. It rang again. He walked over and picked it up slowly. Hello? Hi, honey. Vivian's voice came through the line. Crystal clear. Did you find the apple cider? I know how much you hate spending money on things you can't write off as a business expense. Daniel's knees gave out. He sank onto the edge of the bed. Vivian? He whispered. Where are you? Oh, I'm close, she said pleasantly. I'm very close. Why don't you turn on the TV? Channel 1. Daniel fumbled for the remote, his hands slick with sweat. He pointed it at the massive 85-inch 4K screen mounted on the wall and pressed the power button. The screen flickered to life. It wasn't a cable news channel, and it wasn't a grainy webcam feed. It was a high-definition, multi-camera broadcast. The image showed a boardroom. Not just any boardroom, it was the executive conference room of VS Global, a location Daniel had seen in business magazines but never visited. Sitting at the head of the long obsidian table was Vivian. She wasn't wearing the sweatpants from this morning. She was wearing a tailored white power suit that cost more than Daniel's car. Her hair was blown out in a sleek, professional style, and her makeup was flawless. She looked like a shark in human clothing. To her right sat a man Daniel recognized immediately, Arthur Henderson, the general manager of the hotel. To her left sat a man Daniel feared, Preston Cole, the most ruthless divorce attorney in Chicago, known as the Butcher of the Gold Coast. Sit down, Daniel, Vivian said. She wasn't looking at a camera. She was looking at a monitor that evidently showed the hotel room. She was watching him. What is this? Daniel screamed at the TV. Is this a game to you? Let me out of here. It is a game, Daniel, Vivian replied calmly, clasping her hands on the table. But unfortunately, you didn't realize you were playing it until the final move. Please, sit. And Miss Thorne? You might want to pour yourself a drink. This concerns you, too. Jessica was trembling by the door. I don't want to be here. I didn't know he was married. Well, I did, but he said you were separated. He says a lot of things, Vivian said, her voice amplified by the room's surround sound speakers. Like when he told you he was a partner at Archer & Co.? He isn't. He's a senior VP, a glorified logistics manager. Daniel's face flushed red. Shut up, Vivian. Or, Vivian continued, ignoring him. When he told you he was paying for this suite with his bonus, he didn't tell you that the bonus was actually $150,000 he embezzled from his company's shipping accounts over the last 6 months. Specifically, from the Red Line Logistics Fund. Daniel went cold. The air left his lungs. How? How do you know about Red Line? Vivian smiled. It was a terrifying, thin smile. Daniel, who do you think owns Archer & Co.? The board. Oldman Archer, Daniel stammered. Old Man Archer sold his majority stake 6 months ago to a private equity firm to avoid bankruptcy, Vivian explained, picking up a file folder. That firm is VS Global. My company. I am your boss, Daniel. I have been signing your paychecks since February. Jessica gasped, stepping away from Daniel as if he were contagious. You? You stole money from her company? I didn't steal it, Daniel yelled, though his voice cracked. I was moving assets. It was temporary. It was theft. Preston Cole, the lawyer, spoke up for the first time. His voice was dry and sharp. And we have the digital trail. Every wire transfer, every doctored invoice. We have enough evidence to send you to federal prison for 15 years. But Vivian, Mrs. Archer, decided she wanted to handle this personally before we called the FBI. Why? Daniel whispered, staring at his wife's image. If you knew, why wait? Because I wanted to see how far you'd go, Vivian said, her eyes hardening. I gave you chances, Daniel. I asked you for a date night. I asked you to stay home. If you had stayed home this weekend, if you had chosen your marriage over this cheap thrill, I might have forgiven the embezzlement. I might have treated it as a cry for help. I would have let you pay it back. She leaned into the camera lens. But you didn't choose me. You chose the Chatsworth. You wanted the 5-star experience? You've got it. But in this hotel, the guest doesn't always mistake the service for servitude. Let us leave, Daniel begged, his bravado shattered. I'll sign whatever you want. The divorce papers, the house. Just let us leave. Oh, you'll sign, Vivian said. But not yet. You've booked the room for the weekend, Daniel. And at the Chatsworth, we have a strict no cancellation policy. You're staying until Sunday. And trust me, the bill is going to be astronomical. The screen went black. For an hour, silence reigned in the penthouse. Jessica locked herself in the bedroom, sobbing loudly. Daniel sat on the couch, staring at the blank TV, his mind racing. He needed to get out. He needed a lawyer. He needed money. He pulled out his phone and dialed his personal banker, a guy named Greg at Chase Private Client. This is the voicemail of... He hung up and checked his banking app. Face ID accepted. Loading accounts. Daniel blinked. His checking account, which usually held about $40,000, read $0. His savings? $0. His investment portfolio? Frozen. Pending litigation. No, Daniel muttered, frantically refreshing the screen. He tried to log into his work email to delete the incriminating files about the Redline Fund. Access denied. Your account has been suspended by the administrator. He was digitally dead. In the span of an hour, Vivian had wiped him off the map. Jessica emerged from the bedroom. Her mascara was running, and she had changed out of the red dress into jeans and a t-shirt. She was carrying her suitcase. I'm leaving, she announced. I don't care about the door. I'm going to scream until someone lets me out. Jess, wait, Daniel pleaded, standing up. We need to stick together. She's bluffing. She can't keep us here. That's kidnapping. She owns the building, Daniel, Jessica screamed. She's not kidnapping us. She's keeping us in a luxury suite that you booked. The police won't care. And I'm not going to jail for your embezzlement scheme. I did it for us, Daniel shouted back. To buy you those bags. To take you on these trips. I didn't ask you to steal, Jessica yelled. Suddenly, a pneumatic hiss sounded from the wall near the dining area. A small service elevator, a dumbwaiter, opened. Inside was a silver tray with a single white envelope and a credit card terminal. Daniel walked over and picked up the envelope. It was addressed to Jessica Thorne. Jessica snatched it from him and ripped it open. She read the note, her eyes widening. What does it say? Daniel asked. Jessica looked at him, and for the first time, he saw pure calculation in her eyes. She wasn't the fun, carefree party girl anymore. She was a survivor. It says, Jessica read slowly, that the hotel has a strict policy regarding unregistered guests. However, management is willing to overlook my presence if I pay for my share of the room. So? Daniel scoffed. Pay it. I'll pay you back when I fix this. The price for my exit isn't money, Daniel, Jessica said, her voice dropping. She turned the paper around so he could see it. It was a legal affidavit. I, Jessica Marie Thorne, hereby admit to having full knowledge of Daniel Archer's illicit activities regarding the embezzlement of funds from Archer & Co. I agree to testify as a witness for the prosecution, in exchange for full immunity regarding any accessory charges. Below it was a pen. You're not going to sign that, Daniel said, stepping forward. That's a lie. You didn't know anything. I know now, Jessica said coldly. Jess, if you sign that, I'm done. I'm going to prison. If I don't sign it, Jessica said, tears welling up again. She's going to come after me, too. She has lawyers, Daniel. She has power. You have nothing. I have us, he tried, reaching for her hand. Jessica pulled away. There is no us. You're broke, you're a criminal, and your wife is terrifying. I'm not going down with the ship. She grabbed the pen. Don't. Daniel lunged for her. Click. The room's speakers crackled. Arthur Henderson's voice boomed into the room. Mr. Archer, I would advise against physical confrontation. Security is watching the live feed. If you touch Miss Thorne, we will have the Chicago PD here in 3 minutes to arrest you for domestic battery. That would be untidy. Daniel froze. He looked up at the ceiling, spotting the tiny black domes of cameras he hadn't noticed before. He was a rat in a maze. He watched, helpless, as Jessica signed the paper. She placed it back on the silver tray. The dumbwaiter hummed. The tray disappeared. Moments later, the heavy front door of the suite clicked. The green light flashed. Miss Thorne, you are free to depart, Henderson's voice announced. A car is waiting to take you to your apartment. Jessica grabbed her suitcase. She didn't look at Daniel. She walked straight to the door. Jess, Daniel said, his voice broken. She paused with her hand on the handle. She looked back, her expression a mix of pity and disgust. You should have just taken her to dinner for your anniversary, Daniel. Then she walked out. The door slammed shut. The lock clicked. The red light returned. Daniel was alone. Time lost its meaning. The sun set over Chicago, turning the lake into a sheet of black glass. The city lights twinkled below, mocking him. He was in the most expensive room in the city, and he was pacing like a caged tiger. He was hungry. He hadn't eaten since breakfast. At Nathan's middags, the doorbell rang. Daniel rushed to the door, hoping maybe the police had arrived, or maybe Vivian had come to scream at him in person. He could handle screaming. He couldn't handle this silence. He opened the door. It wasn't Vivian. It was a procession. 4 waiters in white tuxedos wheeled in a massive dining table covered in a white cloth. They moved with military precision. They ignored Daniel completely as they set up the table in the center of the room. They laid out fine china, crystal glasses, and silver cutlery. They lit tall, taper candles. I'm not hungry, Daniel croaked. I want to talk to my wife. The lead waiter, a tall man with a scar above his eyebrow, turned to him. Mrs. Sterling Archer has ordered this meal specifically for you. She insists you eat. And if I don't, then we are instructed to wait here until you do, the waiter said stoically. Daniel sighed and sat down at the head of the table. Fine. What is it? Steak? Lobster? The last meal for the condemned man? The waiter lifted the silver cloche, covering the main dish. Daniel looked down. His stomach turned. It wasn't lobster. It was hamburger helper. Or at least, a gourmet recreation of it. Beside it was a bottle of lukewarm Gatorade, orange flavor, poured into a crystal wine glass. And for dessert, a single, slightly squashed Twinkie on a gold-rimmed plate. Daniel stared at the food. Tears pricked his eyes. It hit him harder than the lawsuit or the frozen bank accounts. 20 years ago, when they were sophomores in college, this was their dinner. They were broke students living in a basement apartment. Daniel was studying logistics. Vivian was studying art history. They had $7 to their name. She had made hamburger helper. They split a Gatorade because they couldn't afford wine, and they shared a Twinkie to celebrate their 6-month anniversary. It was the night he had told her he loved her. It was the night he promised her that one day he would buy her the world. Enjoy, sir, the waiter said, pouring more Gatorade into the crystal glass. Daniel picked up the fork. His hand shook. He took a bite of the pasta. It tasted exactly like 2004. It tasted like guilt. As he ate, the TV flickered on again. This time, it wasn't the boardroom. It was a pre-recorded video. It was footage from their wedding day. They were dancing. Daniel looked young, slim, and completely adoring. Vivian looked radiant. Voiceover. Daniel, from the video. I promise to honor you, to cherish you, and to build a life where you never have to worry about a single thing. I will be your rock. The video cut to another clip. A hidden camera footage from inside Daniel's car, dated 2 weeks ago. He was on the phone with Jessica. Daniel, from the car footage. She's useless, honestly. She just sits at home spending my money. I'm the only one pulling weight in this marriage. Once I secure this bonus, I'm going to start moving cash into the Cayman account so I can leave her dry. The contrast was brutal. The young man who promised the world versus the bitter man stealing from the woman who gave it to him. Daniel dropped the fork. It clattered loudly on the china. Stop it, he yelled at the empty room. I get it. I'm a scumbag. Stop it. The TV turned off. The waiters cleared the plates in silence. As they wheeled the cart out, The lead waiter stopped and placed a small black business card on the table. Mrs. Sterling Archer said that once you have finished the main course, you might be ready for the negotiation. Daniel picked up the card. It had a phone number and a single word printed in the center. Surrender. Daniel looked at the door. He looked at the window. He looked at the luxury that had become his torture chamber. He picked up the hotel phone and dialed the number on the card. It rang once. "Hello, Daniel," Vivian's voice answered. She sounded tired now, less corporate, more human. "How was dinner?" "It was cruel," Daniel whispered. "No," Vivian said softly. "Cruel as sleeping with a 26-year-old in the bed your wife paid for. Cruel as stealing from the company your wife's father built. Dinner was just a reminder." "What do you want, Vivian?" Daniel asked, leaning his forehead against the cold glass of the window. "You've won. You stripped me of everything. Jess is gone. My job is gone. My money is gone. What else do you want?" "I want the truth," she said. "Not the version you tell yourself where you're the hero burdened by a boring wife. I want the actual truth." "Why, Daniel? We had everything." I don't know," he stammered. "Wrong answer," she said sharply. "You have until checkout time tomorrow morning to figure it out. Because tomorrow, Daniel, we aren't just finalizing the divorce. We're deciding whether you walk out of that hotel a bankrupt man or a convict." "Vivian, please. Get some sleep," she interrupted. "You have a big day tomorrow. I've scheduled a meeting for you at 8 a.m. "With who? Your lawyers?" "No," Vivian said. "With the police." The line went dead. Daniel slumped to the floor, the phone cord tangling around him. He looked out at the city lights. Somewhere out there, Vivian was watching him. And for the first time in his life, Daniel Archer realized he was completely, utterly small. The morning sun hit the floor-to-ceiling windows of the penthouse like a spotlight, but for Daniel Archer, it felt like an interrogation lamp. He hadn't slept. He was wearing yesterday's suit, which was now wrinkled and smelled of stale fear and expensive champagne. At 7:59 a.m., the lock on the heavy double doors clicked. The light turned green. Daniel stood up, smoothing his jacket, bracing himself for the police. He expected uniforms. He expected handcuffs immediately. Instead, the doors swung open, and Vivian walked in. She was alone. The shock of seeing her in the flesh, rather than on a screen, took the breath out of him. She looked impeccable. She wore a navy blue trench coat belted at the waist, and her heels clicked rhythmically on the marble floor. She didn't look like a heartbroken wife. She looked like the CEO she was. She stopped 10 feet away from him. The silence stretched, thick and suffocating. "Viv," Daniel started, his voice cracking. He took a step forward. "Honey, stay there," she said. Her voice wasn't loud, but it had the stopping power of a concrete wall. "Vivian, please. We can fix this," Daniel pleaded, his hands out in a gesture of surrender. "I know I messed up. I know I hurt you. But you can't send me to jail. Think about us. Think about the last 15 years. Vivian looked around the room, taking in the shattered photo frame on the floor and the remnants of the hamburger helper dinner on the table. "I have thought about the last 15 years, Daniel," she said. "I thought about them all night. I thought about how I supported you when you failed the broker's exam. I thought about how I asked my father to give you that job at Archer & Co. because you were too proud to take an entry-level position anywhere else. I thought about how I hid my own success with V.S. Global because you were so insecure that you couldn't handle making less money than your wife. I didn't know," Daniel stammered. "You never told me it was your company." "Because you never asked," Vivian snapped, her composure cracking for just a second to reveal the fire beneath. "You never asked what I did all day. You thought I was playing house. You were so busy chasing status, buying watches, and flirting with 20-year-olds that you didn't realize the woman sleeping next to you was building an empire." "I was stupid," Daniel said, falling to his knees. It was a calculated move. He knew she had a soft heart. "I was weak, but I love you. Doesn't that matter? I love you." Vivian looked down at him. Her expression softened, but it wasn't with love. It was with pity. "You don't love me, Daniel," she said softly. "You love the life I provided. You love the safety. And the moment you thought you could get that money on your own by stealing from my family's legacy, you threw me away." She reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a phone. Not hers, his. "You left this in the car," she said, I read the texts, Daniel. All of them. Not just Jessica. The ones to your brother where you called me a nagging anchor. The ones where you planned to file for divorce the day after your bonus cleared. Daniel went pale. There was no spinning this. So, Vivian said, dropping the phone on the carpet, I'm granting your wish. You wanted to be single? You are. You wanted to be free of me? You are. Does that mean you're not pressing charges? Daniel asked, a glimmer of hope rising in his chest. Vivian smiled. It was a sad, final smile. I'm your wife, Daniel. I'm divorcing you, but I won't be the one to put you in handcuffs. I think that would be too painful for me to watch. She turned around and walked toward the door. Vivian, wait, thank you, Daniel cried, scrambling up. I promise, I'll pay back the money. I'll leave town. You'll never see me again. Vivian stopped at the door. She held it open. Oh, you won't be leaving town, Daniel, she said over her shoulder. Arthur? She stepped aside. Arthur Henderson, the general manager, stepped into the doorway. But he wasn't alone. Behind him were two officers from the Chicago Police Department and a man in a cheap gray suit. Detective Miller, Economic Crimes Unit. Daniel Archer? Detective Miller said, stepping into the room. He held up a warrant. We have a warrant for your arrest for wire fraud, corporate embezzlement, and grand larceny. Daniel looked at Vivian. You said you wouldn't put me in handcuffs. I said I wouldn't, Vivian corrected, her hand tightening on the doorknob. I didn't say the state of Illinois wouldn't. The officers moved in. They grabbed Daniel's arms. He struggled, panic taking over. Vivian, don't let them do this. Vivian. She didn't look back. She walked down the hallway, her heels clicking on the marble as the sound of handcuffs ratcheting shut echoed from the presidential suite. As they marched Daniel out of the room, he saw the hotel staff lining the hallway. The maids, the waiters, the bellhops. They weren't bowing this time. They were watching. Some were recording on their phones. They took him down the service elevator, the one used for trash. When they dragged him through the back lobby and out to the waiting squad car, he saw one last thing. Parked at the curb was his Lexus. The trunk was open. A tow truck was hooking it up. And standing on the sidewalk, watching the tow truck with a look of absolute indifference, was Jessica. She was holding a coffee cup from the hotel cafe. She caught Daniel's eye as the police shoved him into the back of the cruiser. She didn't wave. She just took a sip of her coffee and turned away to check her phone. The heavy door slammed shut, the lock clicked, and this time, there was no key card to get him out. 6 months later, the air inside the Stateville Correctional Center didn't just smell stale. It tasted of iron, industrial bleach, and the accumulated misery of 3,000 men. It was a sensory assault that Daniel Archer still hadn't adjusted to, even after 180 days. He sat on a bolted-down metal stool in the visitation block, his hands resting on the cold stainless steel counter. The orange jumpsuit, issued to him on his first day, hung loosely on his frame. In 6 months, the high-flying executive who once dined on Wagyu beef and vintage scotch had withered away. He had lost 25 pounds. The golden tan from his weekends at the lake house had faded into a sickly, fluorescent-lit pallor. The expertly styled hair was now buzzed short, a requirement of the state. But the most striking change was in his eyes. The arrogance, that glint of invincibility that had convinced him he could steal a fortune and get away with it, was gone. In its place was a dull, hollow resignation. Daniel watched the heavy steel door on the other side of the shatterproof glass. He checked the clock on the wall. 2 p.m. His heart gave a painful thump against his ribs. He had requested this meeting. He had used his one allocated legal call to beg for it. Deep down, a pathetic, delusional part of him hoped that she would come. He imagined Vivian walking through that door, perhaps angry, perhaps cold, but present. He fantasized that seeing him like this broken, humbled, destroyed, might trigger some dormant instinct of mercy in her. They had been married for 15 years. After all, you don't just erase 15 years. The door buzzed and swung open. Daniel straightened up, his breath catching in his throat. But it wasn't Vivian. The figure that stepped into the small, sterile booth was a man in a charcoal gray suit that cost more than Daniel's former annual salary. It was Preston Cole, the butcher of the Gold Coast. Vivian's lawyer. Daniel slumped back against the metal wall, the disappointment hitting him like a physical blow. Cole sat down gracefully, placing a leather briefcase on the counter. He looked at Daniel with the clinical detachment of a mortician inspecting a corpse. He picked up the black receiver phone on the wall. Daniel stared at the phone on his side for a long moment before lifting it to his ear. "Mr. Archer," Cole said. His voice was tinny and distorted through the receiver, stripped of any warmth. "You look different." "Prison tends to do that," Daniel rasped. His voice was rough from disuse. He didn't talk much in his block. "Where is she, Cole?" "She isn't here, Daniel," Cole replied, opening his briefcase with a sharp click. "Mrs. Sterling Archer has no intention of visiting this facility. Today, tomorrow, or ever. I am here on her behalf to conclude your business." "Business?" Daniel let out a dry, humorless laugh. "I have no business. I have no job. I have no money. I'm inmate number 8,940. What business could we possibly have?" "The business of erasure," Cole said calmly. He pulled a thick stack of documents from the briefcase and pressed them against the glass for Daniel to see. "I'm here to finalize the dissolution of assets and the divorce decree." Daniel looked at the papers. The legalese blurred before his eyes, but the headings were clear enough. "Do I have anything left?" Daniel asked, his voice barely a whisper. "The house? The investments?" Cole shook his head slowly. "The suburban property was seized and auctioned 3 months ago. The proceeds went directly to Archer & Co. as partial restitution for the funds you embezzled. The court seized the Lexus, the boat, and the contents of your safety deposit box. Your 401k and personal brokerage accounts were liquidated to cover the retainer for your defense counsel." Cole paused, offering a faint, cruel smile. "Although, considering you received a 5-year sentence for a crime they had on video, one might argue your defense counsel was overpaid. But that is neither here nor there. The bottom line, Mr. Archer, is that you are insolvent. You possess nothing." Daniel closed his eyes. The reality of it was absolute. He wasn't just starting over at zero, he was starting over in a hole so deep he couldn't see the sky. "I was guilty," Daniel muttered, opening his eyes. "I did it. Hard to defend that when your wife owns the company you stole from." "Indeed," Cole said. He slid a single document through the narrow metal slot at the bottom of the window. "This is the final decree of divorce. Vivian signed it this morning. It grants her full separation and restores her maiden name completely. It requires only your signature to be filed with the county clerk." Daniel picked up the pen that was tethered to the counter by a short metal chain. He looked at the signature line. Vivian Sterling. The signature was bold, sweeping, confident. It was the signature of a woman who was moving forward. He hovered the pen over the paper. "How is she?" Daniel asked. The question hung in the air, pathetic and desperate. Cole stopped sorting his papers. He looked up, his expression unreadable. "She is exceptional, Mr. Archer," Cole said. "Since the unpleasantness at the Chatsworth, Vivian has thrown herself into her work. In fact, that is why she couldn't be here, even if she wanted to. She is currently in Paris." "Paris?" Daniel repeated. The word felt foreign in his mouth. "Yes, V.S. Global has just completed the acquisition of the Legrand hotel chain. Vivian is there, overseeing the merger and the renovations of the flagship property near the Louvre. She is quite the celebrity in the European hospitality scene right now. She is thriving." A lump formed in Daniel's throat. Paris? They had talked about Paris for years. It was supposed to be their trip for their 20th anniversary. He had promised to take her to the Louvre. He had promised her a romantic dinner on the Seine. Now, she was there, owning the city. And he was here, in a cage in Illinois. "Does she ever talk about me?" Daniel asked, his voice cracking. "Does she ever ask, why?" Cole chuckled. It was a dry, dusty sound. "Mr. Archer, with all due respect, she does not mention your name. You are a line item in a ledger that has been balanced, audited, and closed. She has deleted you." The words cut deeper than any knife. Indifference was far worse than hatred. Hatred meant she still cared. Indifference meant he was a ghost. Daniel looked down at the paper. His hand shook as he pressed the pen to the page. He signed his name. Daniel Archer. He slid the paper back through the slot. "Thank you," Cole said, tucking the document into his briefcase. He stood up, buttoning his jacket. "That concludes our business. You are now officially a single man." Daniel nodded, placing the phone back on the hook. He started to stand up, ready to be escorted back to his cell. "Oh," Cole said, stopping mid-motion. He picked up the receiver again. "One last thing. I almost forgot." Daniel picked up his phone. "What?" Cole reached into his breast pocket and pulled out a small, white plastic card. It looked like a hotel key card, but cheaper. Generic. He slid it through the slot. Daniel picked it up. It was light, flimsy. "What is this?" "Vivian wanted you to have this," Cole explained. "She knows how much you appreciate luxury, how much you value the VIP treatment. She wanted to ensure you didn't feel neglected." Daniel frowned, turning the card over in his hands. There was a magnetic strip on the back and a handwritten number in Sharpie. "It is a prepaid debit card for the prison commissary," Cole said. "She had me load it this morning." For a second, Daniel felt a spark of confusion. Was this an olive branch? A mercy offering? Was she sending him money to survive? "How much is on it?" Daniel asked. $50, Cole said. "50? Yes," Cole replied, a distinct smirk finally breaking through his professional mask. "She was very specific about the amount. And she asked me to convey a message." Daniel stared at the lawyer. "What message?" "She said you should use it to buy yourself something special for your anniversary," Cole said, his eyes glittering. "She suggests a bottle of apple cider and a Twinkie." The memory slammed into Daniel. The dinner in the hotel room. The dinner from their college days. The symbol of the love he had betrayed for a taste of the high life. $50. The exact price of 2 cocktails at the Chatsworth. The price of a cheap date in 2004. Cole hung up the phone. He didn't say goodbye. He simply turned and walked out of the booth, his footsteps echoing down the hallway, leaving Daniel alone in the silence. Daniel sat there, clutching the cheap plastic card. He looked at the $50 limit. It wasn't a gift. It was a final, devastating joke. It was her way of saying that this was all he was worth now. The guard tapped on the glass. "Time's up, Archer. Let's move." Daniel stood up slowly. He shuffled toward the heavy door, the chains on his ankles clinking softly. He had checked into a 5-star life fueled by lies, arrogance, and greed. He had wanted the best of everything. But as the heavy steel bars of his cell block slammed shut behind him with a final echoing clang, Daniel Archer finally understood the bill. The cost of his betrayal was everything he had ever built. And the change was exactly $50. And that is the story of Daniel Archer. A man who thought he was playing a game of chess, only to realize he was just a pawn on his wife's board. He lost his freedom, his fortune, and his future. All because he underestimated the woman he promised to cherish. It's a brutal reminder that in life, and especially in marriage, the truth always has a way of coming out, and sometimes it comes with a receipt you can't afford to pay. Vivian didn't just get revenge. She got justice. She didn't scream or fight. She simply let Daniel destroy himself with the rope he spun. Now, I want to hear from you. Do you think Vivian went too far by setting him up in the hotel, or did Daniel get exactly what he deserved? Would you have signed the immunity deal if you were the mistress? Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. I read every single one. If you enjoyed this story of karma and betrayal, please do me a huge favor. Smash that like button. It really helps the channel grow. And if you haven't already, hit subscribe and ring the notification bell so you never miss a new story. We drop new episodes every Tuesday and Friday. Thanks for watching, and remember, check your receipts.